and it's okay to celebrate. Ernest Holmes writes that an evolved soul is a worshiper of God. When you understand who and what God is, that we're talking about love itself, how dare we not worship love? How dare we not praise love? How dare we not raise our hands in joy when we understand that we are loved unconditionally and this love lives within us? It's not in a cloud, it's not on a mountain, but it is the very beating of your heart. It is the inhale and exhale of your breath. It is the cells that are flowing in through and at your veins. It is that mind which created the cosmos. It is that mind which holds the cosmos into being. It is that thing which I love to say creates in trillions. It only knows how to create more than enough. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. Are we aware? Are we awake? Are we alive? Well, we are talking about love this month. Love is the message. It has always been the message, and we are coming further and further into the realization that actually we are love itself, and so we are the message. In week one, I started us off with the message, free to love, understanding that actually we have the power and capability to live unconditionally, that as free beings, because you're free, you can love. Love is your superpower. But many times we don't live from that level of freedom because we don't know what love is. We talked about that. We don't know who we are. We talked about that. And then many times we're unaware of what we're in bondage to, which is the reason that we are blocked from the experience of love. And so I invite you to go back to that message to understand those principles. And then last week, Pastor Yolanda brought us a powerful, powerful, stirring message on forgiveness. Take back your keys. And she reminded us that we are master metaphysicians and that the only way anybody could drive us crazy is if we give them the keys. And so we know we must actually take back our keys. And how do we take back our keys? It's through forgiveness. And so we have to know what forgiveness is. We have to know how to do it. And we have to know when to forgive. And she said that the time to forgive is always now. Yes, yes. So I want to share a tool with you all. This is something that I think Marie, actually, you brought this up in 4Ts the other night. It's a tool that I love from a brother named Joe Nunziata is his name. And you ever have the experience where a random song just comes into your mind and you're like, where did that come from? It's not something you heard on the radio recently, or it's not something that's playing all the time. So if I'm not talking about like Kiki, If You Love Me, if that comes on, I'm not talking about that, right? Because we know that Drake song is on all the time, right? So that's going to pop up in your consciousness, right? But I'm talking about something that you just, just an old song or way, way back, just you haven't heard. And it's like, wow, where did that come from? What I've come to understand and what I learned through Joe is that when a song like that comes up, it's telling you something. It's either a message for something you need to do or let go, or it can also be an affirmation of where you are. Like as you've made a shift in your consciousness and you've made a change, and then you might find a song just wells up in your spirit, which is a reflection of where you are right here and right now. So I encourage you, anytime a random song just pops up in your mind, pay attention because there's a message. It's either an affirmation that you are where you think you are in consciousness, or it's a message to shift and change or do something. And so a couple weeks ago, I found myself in that space. And there's a song that I love by one of the classic gospel groups, Commissioned. And there's a song from, I think it's their second album, Love Isn't Love. And I just found myself just singing this song. Love isn't love till you've given it away. It's just waiting to be given. All emptiness erased. By this, they will know that you're Christ's disciples and nothing can take its place. Love isn't love till you've given it away. And I paid attention because I said, well, we're about to start talking about love. In August, there must be something here for me to pay attention to. And it's a powerful message in this song. Now, in this song, it's saying, by this you will know that you are Christ's disciples, but we actually understand something even more profound, that actually the Christ is within us, that we are the Christ to the extent that we operate from that consciousness. Yes, yes? And so in A Course in Miracles, it offers us an idea of who and what the Christ is. And it says this: Christ is God's Son as He created Him. He is the self we share, uniting us with one another and with God as well. He is the thought which still abides within the mind that is His source. He has not left his holy home, nor lost the innocence in which he was created. He abides unchanged forever in the mind of God. Christ is the link that keeps you one with God and guarantees separation is no more than an illusion of despair, for hope forever will abide in him. So what is this saying, right? Christ is God's son as he created him. We quote A Course in Miracles all the time that I am as God created me, or I remain as God created me. The reason that that's true is because the Christ in you, the hope of glory, as the Apostle Paul says, is what's the activating force. That mind, when you know and affirm that I am one with God, that's the Christ within you that you're uniting with and speaking from. When you know and speak to this place that I am not my mistakes, that I am not what I've experienced or done in this world, it's because you recognize that you are not your human self, as we talked about in week 1. I am spirit, right? You recognize that then that's the voice that's speaking. That's the knowingness that Christ within us. And so there's a recognition from this song that actually when you express love, when you give love, as it says here in the song, this is how people will actually know that you possess this consciousness that we call the Christ. Now, in this song, love isn't love till you've given it away. Is that a true statement? And if it's a true statement, why? And if it's a true statement, then one question I have is, well, if love isn't love till you've given it away, how do we give without sacrificing? Because there's a difference. We've been taught that giving and sacrifice are one in truth, but they're not. They're very different. And so, yes, this statement is true from the song. Love isn't love till you've given it away. But why is it true? Well, one of the reasons that it's true is because you're a love millionaire. Can you just put your hand over your heart right now and say, I am a love millionaire. One more time. I am a love millionaire. Oh, that feels good. I am a love millionaire. Yes, yes. Okay. So, understanding this, love isn't love till you've given it away, and it's a true statement because we are love millionaires. We got to dig a little deeper into this because we have to understand what love is in order to understand and say and affirm that we are love millionaires and that our millionaire status is only proven or demonstrated when we give love. This is why it's true, and this is what's interesting about love. Now, in week 1, where what I used, because I said we have to understand what love is in order to be free to love, and what we did is I said, we can look at miracles and the attributes of miracles as taught in A Course in Miracles to understand a little bit more about what love is, because A Course in Miracles says that a miracle is an expression of love. And so similarly, we're going to use that same logic today, but we're going to go a little deeper because what I recognize is that we can understand what love is by understanding what God is, because we know that God is love. Yes, yes? That's actually something we read in the Bible. God is love, and perfect love, casts out all fear. And so in order to understand this, if we know that God is love, then we can look at the nature of God to understand it. And this takes us back to New Thought 101. God is omniscience, God is omnipotence, and God is omnipresence. Now, what you may have heard about God is that God is omniscient, God is omnipotent, and God is omnipresent. But you hear, I didn't use those words, so I want you to be clear about the words that I used. God is omniscience, God is omnipotence, and God is omnipresent. So what does that mean? Now, to be omniscient means to be all-knowing. But to be omniscient means that it is all knowledge and all wisdom. So wherever knowledge and wisdom is being expressed on planet Earth, you are watching God being expressed. And this is important to understand because God is not a person, place, or thing. God can only be expressed. It's formless substance. But we can come to understand God when we see God's expression as all knowledge and all wisdom, omniscience. God is omnipotence. It has been told to us that God is all-powerful, like the great and powerful Oz. God is not all-powerful. God is all-power. All the power there is to do any good, harmonious, and perfect thing on this planet, that is God. And then we go to God is omnipresence, Not omnipresent like Santa Claus. Sees you when you're sleeping, knows when you're awake. But God is not just everywhere, but everything. Because as it creates, we are all its expression. So this is then why, understanding that God is omnipresent, this is why we can affirm, I am one with God. This is why we can affirm and speak that the rays of the sun beaming down on planet Earth millions of miles away is God beaming down on us. This is why we can affirm that God is the invisible hand that is spinning the earth around and keeping the solar system in perfect mathematical orbit. That God is Mars. That God is all trillions of known galaxies and the unknown galaxies that we are continuing to experience. This is why we can say that God is every molecule. And at the atomic level, the deeper and deeper we go, we only find God. We find that perfect harmony and perfect correspondence. Science calls it the unified field. And when we whittle down from all of the different branches of science, it all comes back to one. Because God is one. It is everything and everyone and everywhere. So when we recognize this understanding that God is love, then we recognize that what we're talking about when we talk about love, and love isn't love until you're giving it away, we're talking about love being omniscience and omnipotence and omnipresence. And what's interesting is, just as I said that God can't be known except as expressed, so love is the same way. This is why the clinching line of this song is so profound. Love isn't love until you've given it away. Love can only be known as it's expressed, as it's experienced, just as God can only be known as it's expressed and as it's experienced. And so we have to express, we have to give love, we have to express love, we have to give and express the attributes of love, kindness and patience and ease and harmony, all of these things in order to actually know that love is love, that it's real. Now, A Course in Miracles says some wonderful things about love. It says, and I'm just pulling a few things from the text here, but your love is as boundless as His or God's because it is God. The same thing we just said. Love is God. Your love is as boundless as God's because it is His. We go further and we read in the text, teach only love and learn that love is yours and you are love. This is interesting. And then another one I love, only love is strong because it is undivided. This is, again, going back to this idea that love is one. And as we just talked about, this unified field theory, which tells us that everything comes back into one. This is the reason why love is the most powerful thing on the planet and in life, in existence. It is everything because it is one, and nothing can stand against this house that we call love. Love is the thing that's strong. Anything else is not strong. There's other ways that we try to act in the world when we self-protect and block ourselves from getting hurt again. There's other things we do. Oh, I'm not going to put myself out there this time. That's not love. That's fear. Fear is weak. Fear is what protects itself. Fear is what's afraid of being attacked. Love is strong because love is one, and it is undivided. So as I said, like God, love is unformed substance, consciousness which must be expressed. It must be circulated. Love that word. And so this is why I say you're love millionaires, because as love millionaires, we understand about being circulators, right? We understand this law of circulation. We know that we have to actually give in order to receive. That's spiritual law. As we give, as we exhale, we now have the opportunity to what? As you give, you receive. And so love works the same way because love is God and God is love. And so just as we recognize that God must be expressed, God must be experienced, God must be circulated. This is why you were thought into being, because God recognized that it needed to continue to express itself. So it had a good idea called you, and you, and you, and you, and all of you, and everybody watching and listening, and said, I want to circulate myself as Ashley, and I want to circulate myself as Pastor Yolanda, and I want to circulate myself as Jamie, and I want to circulate myself as Frank. And so you recognize that this is the truth of God, and so it must be the truth of love. Love has to be circulated. And when we circulate, we are operating in our divinity. Because we recognize, I love this word in the Bible, we have this word Lord. We saying, Lord, I'm amazed by you. And most often, when Lord can be translated into two different words, but many times when we find it in the Old Testament, we find this word Jehovah, right? Which Jehovah is really taking us back to the Hebrew Yahweh. The J was added because the German scholars were the ones that translated that word, and that's where the J came from. And so this word Jehovah is a powerful word that is translated to English as Lord in Scripture, because what it means is the self-existing one. And the self-existing one means that it never exhausts itself. So as it circulates itself, it's replenishing itself at the same time over and over and over. So we recognize as love millionaires, when we're operating in this place of circulating the love that we are, giving it away, right? Recognizing that love isn't love. We actually don't know love. We don't have any idea or clue about love unless it's being circulated. We also recognize that then it's coming right back to us. And so we're operating in the same divinity. This is even proven by science. There's a formula in physics that proves that this unified field continues to give of itself and replenishes itself at the same time. And that's mathematically proven. This is this thing that the ancients knew as the self-existing one. They didn't need the math to know it because they had tapped into themselves and tapped into the reality and expressed it as this unnamed thing called Yahweh. Your love is as boundless as God's because it is God. And here's where we get into a lesson I love. In the workbook lessons of A Course in Miracles, lesson 127, this lesson says, there is no love but God's. And love millionaires need to understand this. And what does it say in the lesson? Perhaps you think that different kinds of love are possible. Perhaps you think there is a kind of love for this, a kind of love for that, a way of loving one, another way of loving still another. Love is one. It has no separate parts and no degrees, no kinds nor levels, no divergencies and no distractions. It is like itself, unchanged throughout. It never alters with a person or a circumstance. It is the heart of God and also his Son, which is all of us. So hear this. As we just said, the truth is that God is omnipresent. There is nothing but God. And so if that is true of God, that must be true of love. And that's what this is saying. There is no love but God's. Now, when we encounter love, there's a show that Pastor Yolanda and I love to watch. It's probably more me loving to watch it, and she watches it with me. Married at First Sight. Right? I'm fascinated by this show. I'm just fascinated by this show. And there's a couple on there now. This brother, he says, what happens in this show is it's essentially an arranged marriage, right? And they're taking you through this wonderful saga, I think about 12 weeks of their marriage. And at the end, they get to decide if they want to stay in the marriage or not. And so we're only like in week 3. And one of the brothers who's married to this young lady, he told her, I love you. He said, but I had to explain to her that when I'm saying I love you, I'm not saying I'm in love with you, but I love you. Now, in truth, we laugh, but we all understand that, right? Right? But this is because we don't know that we're love millionaires. Now, what does the text say? I'm going to read it again. Perhaps you think that different kinds of love are possible. Perhaps you think there is a kind of love for this or a kind for that is a way of loving one, another way for loving still another. Love is one. It has no separate parts and no degrees, no kinds nor levels, no divergencies and no distinctions. It is like itself, unchanged throughout. It never alters with a person or circumstance. It is the heart of God and also of God's Son. So this idea that we see playing out in the world, which we see on TV and is reinforcing a false belief, is not the truth of what love really is. And so we recognize all that's happening is he doesn't realize that he's a love millionaire. He thinks he got about $5 worth of love in his love bank account. And so I got to be careful with how I use my $5. But when we understand that we're love millionaires and we understand that there is no love but God's, see, the love that you're using is not actually you or your love. You're using and giving this love that is inexhaustible. This love that I just said is self-existing. This love that never exhausts itself. This love that there's a mathematical equation that proves it. That's the bank account that you're spending from. So you never have to worry. So I don't care if you having a transaction in the bank or you meet somebody in the grocery store and you have a good time and you can say, I love you. Because you recognize there is no love but God's. That I love you that you're affirming is the love of God that's moving in, through, and as you. And so this is why some of us are challenged by forgiveness or to love again because of this misunderstanding of the source of love. This is also why I said, how do we love or give this love without sacrificing? Well, this is how. By coming back to this lesson, I encourage you to go to your course for those who have it, right? And go to this lesson. You can just go online to acm.org and look up lesson 127 and read the entire lesson. Understanding that there is no love but God's. And then also coming back to this idea that we shared earlier, that only God's love is strong. What does it say? Only love is strong because it is undivided. Because it's one. Because it's an unlimited bank account. That's what you're loving from. I was talking to my sister. When I was a couple weeks ago, I was down in Maryland and stayed at my sister's. And my niece and nephew are just awesome. I love them. And what's so fascinating to me is, as I was experiencing my love for them, it wasn't based on them doing anything, just their presence. Just hearing them up early in the morning when I'm still trying to sleep, laughing and playing just like my sister and I used to do. And my heart just was beaming like, oh my God, I love these little people. And again, it has nothing to do with what they're doing, just their presence, their existence. And as I began to think about that, because we recognize that all the love that there is really God's love. And wherever we see, as H. Emily Cady says in Lessons in Truth, which Maya Angelou spoke to, she says, where we see the love between a mother and child, that's just a microscopic version of the macro love that is. And so I recognize that if I'm able to love these two little beings in this way unconditionally, how much more does life itself love me? I'm just getting an inkling of how much life looks at me, and just when I wake up in the morning, it's like, I just love him. Even when I'm making mistakes and doing foolish stuff and not living according to my millionaire status, it still just looks at me and says, I just love him. Life is looking at you the same way. Even when you forget that you're a love millionaire, even when you forget that this bank account is inexhaustible, every day is payday. It just keeps flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing. And so we recognize that by this knowledge, this is how we get out of this place of sacrificing, right? Because sacrifice and even compromise, well, let's talk about sacrifice. Sacrifice just means I lose out, but somebody else gains, and it's okay in the long run because it was good, right? I say sacrifice is a 4-letter word, right? It doesn't work, right? Now, compromise is similar because compromise just says both sides give up something for the good. But that's counter to this millionaire bank account that both sides have. This is why I love, and for many of you, you know, I quote this often. In Think and Grow Rich, there's this wonderful affirmation from Napoleon Hill where he says, I will engage in no transaction which does not mutually benefit all whom it affects. He was admonishing us to come to this love place of this love millionaire status, recognizing that no transaction, love isn't love till you've given it away. So in this transaction, human transaction of relationship and involving myself with any person, I will engage in no transaction that does not mutually benefit. That's different than a compromise. That means that we both win. And those are the solutions that I'm looking for. Many times if I find myself in a situation, what I begin to affirm in prayer or just out loud, okay, I know there's a solution that works for everybody involved, and I'm not willing to move or say yes to anything until I know that all whom it affects benefits. Because I'm a love millionaire. So then we recognize that love millionaires are channels for the expression of God as love. Because this is what's interesting about love, as the song says, love isn't love till you've given it away. Love is always seeking to be expressed. It's like this thing that's knocking on the door. It's like the Publishers Clearinghouse knocking on your door saying, you've won, right? Every day, it's seeking to remind you of this millionaire status that you have and saying, circulate me. This is one of the beautiful things about being wealthy, is that you learn, and it can become even more fun to think about all of the different ways that you can now circulate. As you have more than enough, as your base needs are met, right? As you're not worried about how you're going to pay your mortgage or your rent, and you're not even worried about how you're going to send your kids to college or any of those things. You're now living from this overflow. And so you got to circulate. Why? Because we recognize that just as in our bodies, if your blood is not circulating, what does that lead to? If your blood is not circulating in your body, what does that lead to? Okay. And so as we recognize that, it is the same truth with our money, that money must be circulated, and it is the same truth for this love that is God. It has to be circulated. Because if you don't circulate this love, it's going to back up, it's going to get clogged up. I remember having this wonderful experience. I was deciding to work with a coach. We had a wonderful, wonderful time together, but and her lens was all about your relationship with money. And I knew I wanted to work with her, but I was afraid at the same time, and thinking about how much, what her monthly fee was. And ironically, at that particular time, the tub in my apartment was completely clogged and backed up. And my super was there working on the tub, and I'm on the phone with the coach because she's like, okay, Greg, you got to make a decision. Are you ready to move forward? I gave you a couple days to think about it. And I'm still kind of hemming and hawing, and I'm asking questions. And then I just took a breath, and I realized, I said, you know what? All of my yeses have brought and opened up my life in so many powerful ways. I'm just going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, and I know that all will be well, and I know that this is going to take me where I want to go. And the moment that I said yes, the super said, oh, it's the clog, it's all cleared up. You're all good now. Because there was a recognition that was the outpicturing of what was going on within my own consciousness. And so as soon as I said yes, that opened up a pathway, and then that opened up my bathroom, my tub. So we recognize that we must live in this place of circulation. Now, A Course in Miracles says something here in the text which I find beautiful. It says that no course whose purpose is to teach you what you really are could fail to emphasize there is no difference in what you are and what love is. This is interesting. No course, I don't care what kind of teaching you bring yourself to, no course whose purpose is to teach you what you really are, which is what we affirm each and every week, the truth of who and what we are, who and whose we are, could fail to emphasize there is no difference in what you are and what love is. You are a love millionaire. It goes further in the text, and it says, the world is the belief that love is impossible. And I want to break this down for a minute. So when we think about, we use, words like the world. I'm not talking about planet Earth, right? Planet Earth is a real living entity, organism, Mother Earth, Gaia, right? That has a wonderful atmosphere and the clouds, and we have the waters, and we have the land, and we have all of the wonderful beings, including ourselves, which inhabit those, and including the plants, which inhabit those. And that creates this wonderful life-giving organism that is Earth, right? That's not what we're talking about, but the world is the belief that love is impossible. And so we recognize that the world is really what our collective belief is on it, or what our individual belief is, but sometimes collectively, because we splinter off into groups and have the same world. So this is why we can live in two different worlds at the same time. And so what A Course in Miracles is saying, the world, in this case, this world is a belief that love is impossible. That's that world that brother on Married at First Sight was living in. He really thinks that love is impossible because he met this woman and fell deeply in love with her, but is afraid to say, I love you in truth, because he thinks he has $5 worth of love, and he's got to hold on to that for the rest of his life, which means he's only going to give away pennies at a time, if that. And if they don't act right, I'm going to ask for my pennies back, huh? Oh, that's just me? I'm the only one that's ever done that? All right. And so the world teaches lack. The world teaches limitation. The world teaches separation. The world teaches otherness. But as we just read, no course whose purpose is to teach you what you really are could fail to emphasize that there is no difference in what you are and what love is. Love is absolutely possible because you know just as you are breathing in and out. So God is real and God is possible. Therefore, love is real and love is possible. I was reminded there was a song I wrote many years ago. I believe in the power of love. I believe in the power of peace. I believe in the power of freedom for all humanity. I believe that we are one. I believe that is the key. I believe in the power of love. I believe. And in the second verse, I talked about this idea that we let our imagination be controlled by what we see. Like we can only think, oh, it's possible because I saw it, instead of going within and recognizing that all things are possible because I saw it within myself, right? And so similarly, many times we're waiting to see what unconditional love, or we're waiting to believe in unconditional love once we see it. But how will we know that love is real if it never can be found, right? Actually, what if you decide to be the expression of love? What if you decide to be the demonstrator of this millionaire status that we all possess? What if you decide to give freely? What if you decide to give your love freely and openly and unsparingly, recognizing that your love comes from an unending bank account, that your love comes from an eternal bank account, recognizing that you are a love millionaire, recognizing that you have more to give and more to give and more to give, and it always comes back to you because giving and receiving are one in truth. Last point. Giving and receiving are one in truth. This keeps coming up because I talked about this in a couple classes. I have this idea in my mind about a sermon called Take Yourself Off the Microscope. And essentially what my thought process around that is to understand that we live in duality, but understanding that duality is not the thing. Because so often, as we're living our life, we're always thinking about the things that we can taste, touch, and smell out here in the physical world, and thinking that that's real, and then trying to understand life solely from that perspective. And so when we say things like giving and receiving are one in truth, that sounds good, right? But then it's like, but no, giving and receiving are not the same thing, Pastor Greg, right? I've given a lot. I may not have received a lot. So if it's one in truth, I'm waiting for the other side of that, Pastor Greg, right? But we recognize that this is actually a spiritual principle that we really understand on a physical level, because when we talk about inhaling and we talk about exhaling, what are we talking about? Breathing. Breathing is what we're talking about, but we use words inhale and exhale to talk about a process called breathing. Breathing is one. Breathing is one, but we have these words inhale and exhale so we can understand that there's components to it. But if you're just exhaling, you're not breathing. If you're just inhaling, you're not breathing. Inhaling and exhaling is breathing. Yes, yes? And so we recognize in the same way, giving and receiving are one in truth. If you're just giving, you're not loving. If you're just receiving, you're not loving. But as you're giving and receiving, now you are a love millionaire and operating in the full process of what's actually going on. And with that, I invite everybody to stand. Let's stand. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And so we take a deep breath in and we breathe out. We breathe in and we breathe out. There is one love, one love, one love, one love, one love, one love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. There is one love, one God, one expression, and yet it expresses us all. One presence, and yet it is present everywhere. One power, and yet its power is experienced everywhere. One thinker, one mind, and yet its mind is our mind. We stand in this profound relationship right here and right now that we are one with God, We are one with omnipresence and omnipotence and omniscience. We are one with love itself. And as we stand in this profound awareness that we are one with love, we know that we are love millionaires. For this love that we speak about is unlimited. This love that we bring our attention to and that we are affirming in this month's series is a love that's eternal. This love that we're talking about is a love that's unending. This love that we're talking about is a love that is self-existing. This love that we're talking about is a love that never exhausts itself. This love that we're talking about is a love that replenishes itself. This love is a love that we're talking about that has no end. It never fails. And as we are clear about what this love is that we're talking about, and as we are clear that we are one with this love, we now affirm that we are love millionaires, wealthy in love, rich in love, lavishly loved and loving, elegantly loved. We wear the finest clothes weaved in a thread of love. We walk proudly with crowns of love on our heads and wearing love jewels because we are wealthy in love. We are richly dipped in love. This substance permeates our very being, for we recognize that even at the cellular level of our being, it is love that knows to digest our food perfectly. It is love that causes the blood to flow through our veins. It is love that takes anything that we take into our body that is not serving our bodies and ignites the white blood cells to begin to fight off that dis-ease. It is love that is always operating on our behalf, that's beating our heart while we rest at night. It is love that causes the sun to shine on our planet, giving us light and life. It is love that rains down as free liquid from the sky. It is love that provides the sustenance that we need to live and grow and be the powerful beings on this planet, stewards of this earth. It is love. And so we make a declaration today, and from this moment forward, to live from this strong place, to live from our strength, which is love. We make a vow and we affirm today that we are love millionaires. And we will give, for we recognize that love isn't love until it's given away. But as it's given, it returns back to us multiplied in a never-ending cycle of increase and enjoyment. For this truth, I am so very grateful. I release this prayer back into the law, which is always in operation, operating for our good and in our good as our good. And with rejoicing in thanksgiving, we lift up our voices and we say, amen, ashe. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you, God.